Ladies and gentlemen, I am Chris Featherstone. This is the All In Post Wrestling Inc. podcast. Very, very happy to host the show tonight with Raj Giri as always. And we have from Views from the Turnbuckle, the weekly column we have here at Wrestling Inc., Jesse Collings. How are you tonight, Jesse?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing well. How about you, Raj?
Chris, I am rolling. How are you?
I'm exhausted watching All In, but it was a good exhaustion. So we'll talk about that throughout the podcast tonight. So let's hop right into it. We had the Jesse. You wanted to elaborate on the 0 hour over budget battle royal that Flip Gordon for all these weeks. He was all out. He was having an all out party, and he didn't win his mixed tag match, and everybody thought that he was going to be all out, but he ended up winning the over budget battle royal to be all in. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so they had two matches on the pre-show, and I thought the pre-show was fine, but it was very much a pre-show. They had two matches, but they had a lot of the hype videos. They had a lot of advertisements. They kept telling you how you could buy it on pay-per-view. So it was very much the kind of stereotypical pre-show. The battle royal I thought was really good because in general, I think the battle royal is kind of an outdated match stipulation. A lot of times they're not very good. It's just a bunch of guys in the ring. The fans can't see what's happening until the very end. Mm-hmm. But they did a really good job with this battle royal as far as letting each guy in the match, or in the case of Jordan Grace, a girl, have their own little moment and have their interaction. And they had a good mix of, indie guys. They had guys like Billy Gunn and Shane Helms as the Hurricane, so kind of that nostalgia thing. And I thought it came across really well. It was probably as good of a battle royal as you could do. And they did the finish with Flip Gordon unmasking himself and eliminating Bully Ray, which was kind of predictable. I think the whole storyline was that Flip Gordon was going to somehow end up on the show, but the fans loved it, so I think you can't really complain about it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the other match, which is SCU against the Briscoes?
Yeah, it was the first match on the show, and it was the kind of match you would want to open up a show. It wasn't a main event level match, but the crowd really liked SCU. They're a group of guys who've seen their stock rise a lot by being on Being the Elite.
Yeah.
And the Briscoes came in as heels. They're very dependable. These teams work well together. It was a solid wrestling match. It wasn't the best match on the show, but it was what you would want to see out of a pre-show opener. And the crowd was hot for it right from the beginning, which was nice to see.
Yeah. And, you can always... I was going to say, just Daniels and Kazarian. I mean, they're always a safe bet to go against. Anyways.
Yeah, it was Scorpio Sky and Kazarian, and they did a lot of stuff.
Stephen Amell.
Yes.
Yeah.
They had done like these really interesting like Rocky 4 parodies. I think it's Rocky 4 Rocky 3 parody on YouTube, and they kind of played into that by Scorpio Sky coming out dressed as Apollo Creed, and there was that kind of stuff, and they did a good job hyping the match. And it was like I said, both teams veteran, solid work, got the crowd involved. What you want out of an opening match.
Yeah, so people wonder why we're not talking about this. Me and Chris were not able to catch the pre-show. I had a prior engagement, and Chris had a hard time getting the stream going for the pre-show. So Jesse was the only one. Real quick before we're going match by match in the main card, just general thoughts. What were you guys' thoughts on All In as a whole? Chris, why don't you start?
I think it was like Wrestle Kingdom on steroids, honestly. and that's a good thing. I'm real big. I'm old school, and I've been on the podcast enough for people to know that I'm a big old school fan. But at the same time, this wasn't traditional. But I do like the fact that they brought a lot of tradition in the pay-per-view overall, bringing having even Glacier coming out with Cody, Lanny Poffo coming out with Black Machismo or Jay Lethal. I like how they integrated the generations of wrestling within the show. And one subtle thing that I really, really liked was, and Cornette talked about this before, how when he was working with WWE, he hated that the lights were just totally up all the time, even showing the crowd. And he said that Bruce Pritchard basically said that Vince wanted the lights to stay on in order to, catch the fans' reactions, any signs and things like that. I love the fact that they dimmed the lights, similar to how New Japan did it. So just those little subtle things, really, it was a home run for me.
Jesse?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good show. It wasn't the best show I saw this year. It probably wasn't the best show I saw this summer. But if you were tuning in and you were expecting, I want to see a good, entertaining wrestling show, this was that. And I think in the last few weeks, maybe the expectations got a little too big for it. Maybe people were start thinking it was going to be the best show ever. And if the fact that it wasn't will be disappointing to some people. But I think if your expectations were to see a good show, then this was that. And I think it's unfair to expect it to be this unbelievable show that every match was amazing and it had all these 5-star matches and all stuff like that, because that's completely unrealistic to expect. But I think overall the show was a strong show. And I think the most important thing for it was that it had to be entertaining, it had to move quick enough, and it had to satisfy the fans who were in attendance. Because the only thing that I think could really sink the show was if the live fans turned on it and it was this big bomb. But they were able to keep them engaged. The fans were hot right up through the main event. And I think that will be big for potentially drawing 10,000 fans to another show next year, because you satisfied the fans at the arena.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at this like, looking at it objectively, I thought as a wrestling show, just overall as a wrestling show, TakeOver was better, SummerSlam was better just as a wrestling show. But for what this was, it reminded me of like ECW One Night Stand when WWE brought it back. Mm-hmm. Like it's a one-off. It's almost like a gift for the fans. It's not meant to be anything too serious, right? It's like a fun show that's something fun for the fans. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's what it was, and I thought it delivered in all aspects. I thought the match placement was great. The main event was definitely rushed. You could tell they were running out of time. They went right to the finish, and they had 1 minute left as they went off the air. But it's just like One Night Stand. Like the people that loved ECW, I mean, that was for them, and this is for an independent, wrestling fan. And it's weird to call it independent wrestling now because ROH is owned by Sinclair. New Japan is not an indie. Even Impact, Impact used to do 1 million viewers each week, so it's kind of weird to.
What is independent? Right
yeah,
now?
It's like alternative wrestling. I think
I've kind of started just being like wrestling outside of WWE, because that's what I think most people think about when they think about independent wrestling, and it's If I think the actual definition is probably if guys are signed to exclusive contracts, then it's no longer independent because they're really not independent workers. But yeah, you're right. It's hard to say what is independent and what isn't.
Right. So we'll just say alternative wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But and this event, it opened it created a new twist as far as you look at the pro wrestling business as it's been going. And you had a big turn when WWE bought WCW, for the worse in my opinion. But it was whatever it was what it was. And this is another one. It just shows where we're at. We're at a point in time where an independent show, I don't think they could do it monthly or anything like that.
Right.
But they were able to sell out an arena in 30 minutes and over 10,000 tickets. So it's a very important event. You cannot what's the word? Take away from their accomplishments, but yeah, I think people had too many high expectations, and it's one of those things when people create it in their head, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the Royal Rumble. Like they're like, there were no surprises, or so and so didn't show up. It's like they were never advertised to.
Yeah.
You build it up too much in your head, and I think a lot of people did that with All In. Not really any big surprises. Chris Jericho was a good surprise, but I think people were expecting CM Punk and all this stuff, and it's like that stuff's not happening. So just enjoy it for what it is, and I think it was an enjoyable show. It's not one I would show to my friends, except for maybe the last hour. But it was a fun show.
Entire Joey Ryan segment out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Yeah, it's one of those things that's so stupid, but it works for this audience.
Here was one of the most interesting things about the show was that in a lot of ways this show was kind of fan service for people who watch Being the Elite and everything like that. So if you follow the show, like if I was, I loved the Hangman Page Joey Janela match. If you didn't watch Being the Elite, you were probably wondering why the boots were a big deal or why he had a phone or anything like that. So for the hardcore fans, it was like, oh yeah, of course he has the phone, and the whole show was kind of like that. But because this show had so much hype, because it was getting a lot of press coverage, I think there were a lot of people who weren't totally familiar with being the elite in the wrestlers on the show. And if those fans tuned in to see this might not have been the show for them, because it really wasn't a really good introduction to, what the guys in the show are like and what New Japan or what Ring of Honor is like, because you kind of had to already know a lot of the stuff. And I think that's an interesting balance for, was this show just to celebrate, their success and all their hardcore fans, or was it to promote their brand to a wider audience? And it's unclear what that actually is.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not a big fan. They have their audience, and, that's great for that. Being the lead audience and building angles and stuff off of it. I'm not a big fan of building matches out of and storylines out of comedy, like a comedy sketch thing. It'd be like WrestleMania. The big angles were done on, a Coneheads skit on Saturday Night Live. You know what I mean? Like, for me, my personal preference, I love wrestling when it's two larger than life personalities that seem like they legitimately hate each other, and then they're going to wrestle, as opposed to this fun comedy stuff. But then again, this was not the main event. It was lower on the card. I see Hangman Page as a superstar. It seems a little like I don't know. I feel like he's a little above that kind of crap. But I wasn't bored. I thought it was kind of cute. I thought the giant penises was funny. So, it's one of those things. I'm glad none of my friends were there.
That's what I said on Twitter. I was like, oh, I really hope no one invited their friends over. Like, oh yeah, come watch All In. It's this new type of wrestling. It's going to be great.
I'm like, my wife and daughters are going to walk in right now. I know they are.
There's no way. It's before we go to the match by match real quick, something similar to what you both said. For me, it was a home run, because honestly, my expectations weren't very high for this. Honestly, like, people were just, saying this is wrestling, and I've, waited my whole life for this. I mean, that wasn't my mentality, going into All In, to be honest. And so I said this on my podcast on Tuesday. People were asking me, like, am I excited about All In? I was like, I mean, I respect Cody and the Young Bucks for the vision, and I'm excited about it from a fan standpoint, but I'm not one of those guys who were just like losing sleep from excitement because All In is here, and so, because it exceeded my expectations that way, it was good. I mean, there was definitely some critiques, in which we'll get to here in just a few. And you were talking about match placement, Raj. I don't think the placement was very good. And we'll get to that in a bit. So let's jump right into the match by match.
Do it.
Let's go with Matt Cross versus MJF. Now, Matt Cross is a big indie guy. I mean, he's been in Lucha Underground. He's been around for a while. He was on Tough Enough as well. Didn't make the cut. I've had him on my show before. He's a veteran. He's been around for a long time. So, I remember he tweeted something about All In, about just this being the moment for him. Went against MJF. MJF is really starting to become popular in MLW. For those who don't know who MJF is, he actually went against Joey Ryan to become the inaugural middleweight champion in MLW. So definitely a up and coming good star. Raj, what are your thoughts on this match?
So I came in towards the end. This was when I started, when I got back. So I think we'll throw this one to Jesse.
Pass the baton to Jesse.
I thought, speaking of match placement, I thought actually this was the right spot for the match, because I think if you threw this out there, like, sometimes the way WWE does, where they'll have like one of their two biggest matches on the show, then they'll have that kind of in-between match where the crowd is dead or they have to have a recovery period, so they throw out like a random tag match. But so if you put this match out later in the card, like say you threw it in after Okada and Skrull and before the Bucks in Rey Mysterio match, then maybe the crowd wouldn't have been into it. But since it was the opening match, the crowd was into it. I think in some ways this show was a celebration of independent wrestling. And
alternative wrestling.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
Just kidding.
Matt Cross.
New hashtag, Raj.
Matt Cross, who he does wrestle as Son of Havoc in Lucha Underground, if you don't know. And he's been around, like as Chris said, he's been around a really long time. I think he's really talented, but he hasn't really gotten his break. He hasn't been a big star in Ring of Honor, hasn't really worked for New Japan or that kind of stuff. He's a veteran of the independent scene. MJF is kind of the other spectrum of that. He's a young guy starting to begin his rise through the independents. And I think in some ways it's fitting to have those kind of guys on this show, because at the end of the day, it is a celebration of independent wrestling and guys who have had success outside of WWE. So while these aren't the biggest, most well-named stars in the show, and they shouldn't be in the main event or anything like that, I think it was fine to have them on the show, and they did a fine job.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as match placement, what I mean is like as far as importance and quality goes. And because if this was a WWE show, they probably would have opened with like Okada versus Skrull. So something hot to really get the crowd going. I don't know if this match was it or not. Again, I missed most of it. So
I think this was going to be an easy crowd anyway to get going. The people that fly to shows don't fly to shows to remain silent. So I think with such a large fly-in crowd that these people are going to be making noise, even if they didn't really like the match. So I don't think that was a problem.
I'm not really a big fan of WWE's style match placement, honestly.
Me neither.
I think it should crescendo. I think that like an MJF Matt Cross, like, because I think of like boxing or MMA, right? So I think of like prelims, and I think just as far as like your big money matches should be top heavy, and I think that kind of like for this right here, I think Matt Cross and MJF was a perfect placement because, like you said, Jesse, you're already going to have a hot crowd. You're in Chicago, it's all in. You got hardcore fans. You got 10,000 fans basically endorsing into a vision of something they've never seen before. So I think that alone goes to show that it doesn't matter if you would have placed, anybody in the front spot. But I think this match does. But WWE, on the other hand, when you put like an Intercontinental Championship in the very beginning, and
or AJ Styles versus Shane McMahon,
yeah, you're right, AJ and Shane, it's like it's just, you wonder why at the end people throw beach balls because in the beginning it's too oversaturated with getting their attention and their energy.
I think they're under the belief that you got to give that crowd a rest period, and they can't just be hot the entire time. But I don't know. I mean, like you said, Chris, in boxing and MMA, and if you look how New Japan does their shows, and I know everyone's going to get on me for comparing New Japan to WWE, but it's true. Each match builds on each other, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and those fans don't need a rest period because they can stay hot. The fans didn't need a rest period tonight, even though it was a 5-hour show, because they stayed hot and you kept building on the matches. And it does a disservice to these guys that are working hard, who are in like the kind of burner match. And maybe if they opened the show, they would have been really hot for them. But you get like, Baron Corbin and Finn Balor are wrestling, in this right before the main event, and the crowd just saw a big match, and those guys aren't getting any reaction. It doesn't really help anybody.
Yeah. Except, that's like I think Shane Helms or someone had sent out a tweet saying, second from the main event is the semi-main event. It's like not in WWE. It's rarely that. I mean that would mean like Nicholas was in the semi-main event of WrestleMania this year. Yeah. So I agree. I like how it builds. Now in this case, the most heavily promoted match was in the middle, but I agreed with that decision. But we'll get to that.
Yeah. We'll get to that. What was WrestleMania 18's semi-main event? It was the women's match.
Yeah.
It was like Jazz and Trish or something like that.
WrestleMania 18 was Rock and Hogan, right?
Yeah, was that on? Rock and Hogan was a semi-main event, and then I think Triple H and Jericho was the main event. They might, because that was a big deal because Jericho absolutly hated.
No, it was Jazz and.
So they did have a burner match.
It was Jazz beating Lita and Trish Stratus.
Yeah, that's what it. Yeah, I remember that. Like, it was like that was just really odd to me. Like, why would you put this match? Because that was after Austin and Hall, right?
No, it was after Rock and Hogan, I believe. Yeah, it was Rock Hogan, the Jazz, and against Lita and Trish Stratus.
That's terrible. Like,
and then Triple H and Jericho. So it kind of,
And you had the hottest reaction with Rock and Hogan, and then you bring the triple threat. Like, that was that's
I'm sure a lot of that was Triple H's doing, but
that wouldn't surprise me. Definitely. So we got Christopher Daniels against Stephen Amell. Speaking of WWE, we saw Stephen Amell with his, Arrow SummerSlam a few years back, teaming up with Neville. They went against who? Cody and Barrett, right? I think it was.
Yeah.
Man, wow, leaps and bounds from what we saw in WWE. Raj, what do you? We saw he didn't win, but Daniels went over, did the BME. But Amel took a table spot, and he did a Van Terminator. I mean, and there were some videos before All In as far as just him training rigorously, to prepare for this, and it really showed. What are your thoughts, Raj?
This is one of those, again, like for this crowd, it worked. I respect the hell out of Stephen Amell. I love that he takes it seriously. He's not just out there promoting something or just trying to, get himself over. You could tell he really loves pro wrestling. That being said, I thought this match looked like crap for the most part. Like he tried. I mean, he went through a table. That's great. But the punches were some of the worst looking punches I've ever seen. Actually, I should take that back. Not I've ever seen, but they look really bad.
Cena's punches are pretty bad.
Well,
you can't mention bad punches without talking about Shane McMahon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Except he actually lays them in too. So his hurt the most.
Yeah.
And they look terrible. So, I thought as far as if you're looking at it as a match, if you didn't know Stephen Amell was an actor, you'd be like, what is this crap? Sure. It went too long for what they had, I thought. Especially considering how abrupt the main event had to be, they could have cut out 5 minutes of this match. But love that Stephen Amell takes it seriously. I love that he did this show. And I love that he wanted to try to have a long match, but I thought it looked bad. Like if you're watching it, and you're not a pro wrestling fan, you would just be like, wow, this is so fake. Like everything looks so fake. They're doing, this
the slap punches
as a punch.
the Rock slap punches.
Yeah. And, it just looks bad. But, it was for this fan base, it worked.
Perfect. Yeah. Jesse, your thoughts?
Yeah. So when we're used to seeing celebrities in wrestling matches, which up until this point has been almost exclusively WWE since WCW closed, but when we see them, it's like they're in a tag team match, they basically don't do anything, then they get a hot tag, they do 20 seconds of spots, then they're involved in the finish, and that's it. This was different because they basically treated Stephen Amell like he was a wrestler, and they didn't have him in a tag match, and he had a singles match, and they tried to do real wrestling stuff, and it wasn't a ton of smoke and mirrors. And because of that, you didn't have a very good match because Stephen Amell is not very experienced. So no matter how experienced and talented Daniels is, which is quite, you're never going to have a good match. There's going to be botched spots and stuff like that. I thought it wasn't a good match. But like Raj said, you got to respect Stephen Amell for, he's a guy who is an actor whose main line of work is acting, and if he got seriously injured, that would delay his ability to work, but he just likes to wrestle, and he's taken big risks. He did a coast-to-coast dropkick. He did a dive through the table that was bad. The table barely, it broke super easily. Probably didn't provide that much padding on his fall. So I respect him for that. I think he's taken it seriously. Clearly the guys like him because there's no way he gets that kind of stuff on a show like All In if the wrestlers didn't like him. But you said, it's not going to be that big of a match. I did think it went kind of long. You probably could have put him in a tag match. You probably could have done basically the exact same stuff and not had to deal with all of the bad work punches and the missed spots and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, it worked and it didn't kill the show.
Yeah.
And someone pointing out Phil in the chat that I wrote on Twitter that it looked like two friends playing wrestling in the yard. Where you're really not trying to hurt each other. And you know what to do, but you don't know how to sell. Stephen Amell standing right up, and and that takes time. Jesse, to your point, it's very hard to find celebrities that can do successful singles matches. I mean, Lawrence Taylor is one. Ronda Rousey, she's having to work a lot at the Performance Center and choreograph the matches move for move. But Lawrence Taylor, that's one that he was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there are guys from time to time. Taylor and similar to Rousey, those guys had very big matches to wrestle. They coordinate them every step of the way. I don't know how much of the choreography they did for this match. They might have done.
I think they did a bit. When I was talking to Cody, and the interview's up on our YouTube channel, he mentioned that Cody was at the gym working, with Daniels. But again, they didn't have that much time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, and of course, like I said, Christopher Daniels with the BME at the end to go over Amell. So then we had the four-way.
Now, real quick. So for the alternative wrestling fan, this was great. For myself, I hate seeing wrestlers selling for skinny actors, and I hate, again, I like seeing wrestling presented as two badasses that want to go at it. And when I see an actor, going toe to toe with a guy that's been in the business for 20 years. That drives me nuts.
Yeah, at least it wasn't in WWE, because if it was in WWE, the celebrity would have went over.
He did. Stephen Amell did. Remember?
No. Yeah, I know. But that's how it goes. So
and I hated that.
The lesson was told.
Yeah, like Ronda Rousey, I'm fine with, because she is a legit badass.
Yeah,
so if it was Brock Lesnar coming in from MMA and going, wasn't in pro wrestling, I'd be fine with it. But an actor, I don't like it.
Yeah. Case in point, Jesse, when Floyd Mayweather went over Big Show. So that was a very terrible. So yeah, you're right. You're right, Raj. There's no way in the world that the Floyd Mayweather would ever go over Big Show in any other type of combat. So all right, so we get the 4-way women's match: Tessa Blanchard, Madison Rayne, Chelsea Green, and Britt Baker. So Tessa Blanchard ended up going over, ended up winning. It was a pretty decent match for the 4-way. I think it was Britt Baker who was just doing like a series of like switchblades, which I didn't understand why she was doing that, because she didn't do them very good though. But I've seen a lot of her indie work and she's pretty good. But I figured they would give this to Tessa just because they really pushing her on Impact. She just won the Impact Championship. So if I was booking this, I would have given it to Madison Rayne. I don't know, it just seems like she would have been like a name that's a veteran and working her way up to that. She was just in WWE, for the tournament and things like that. But let's go with Jesse first. What are your thoughts on this match, and who would have you had to win the match?
Well, since this is all in and it's not going to be like we're going to have a follow-up show really with all this stuff, it didn't really matter who won, because it wasn't like someone was getting a title shot or anything like that. I think Tessa was the right person to win, just because I think if you watch the match, she's very much the future of women's wrestling in some sort of ways. And Madison Rayne, while good and a name and the most recognized person in the match, it makes sense to have her kind of not win the match. Because if she won the match, what did you really do? Madison Rayne, someone everyone already knows. She was, a big star for Impact when they had a much bigger following than they do now. So I like Tessa as the pick. I thought the match was really good. The finish was a little bit awkward, because I think they were trying to do a finish where the 3 count happens and then the breakup happens like a second later, but it was almost like the breakup happened too fast. So it almost looked like it was supposed to be a near fall spot.
I think it was supposed to be a near fall, and then they go to the finish shortly after.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. And I thought the crowd was really getting into it the last 30 seconds or so. I thought this was a really good match. The finish kind of made it flat, which is going to bump it down in my ratings a little bit. But up until that point, the match was really good. And I think it's just great that, the fans have evolved a lot over the last 5 years when it comes to women's wrestling and becoming accepting of it. Because this match was good, but maybe 5 years ago, the fans wouldn't have allowed the match to be good, and people would be making bathroom break jokes and all that kind of stuff. We see this in every promotion. It's not exclusive to Match Tonight, but I just think it's a welcome change that we're seeing in wrestling. It's just fans expecting a women's match to be good and being supportive of it, as opposed to rolling their eyes and being like, I'm going to see what they have at the concession stand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I agree. I thought this match was above average. I thought it was close to good. But I agree with Jesse. I think Tessa Blanchard going over was the right move. She's the future. She showed the most. I think she looked like a superstar in there. The way she carried herself, she was great in the ring. She has that poise. I think she's a superstar. Chelsea Green, I see a lot of upside too.
I do too.
Yeah. So I thought. I thought this was a pretty good match. Again, that finish did hurt it. I think they weren't supposed to finish there, because Tessa's reaction was really disappointed. Like, she was shocked that who was it? Chelsea kicked out.
Yeah, Chelsea. Yep.
And so I think they were supposed to do a couple more spots before going to the finish. But outside of that, I thought it was good. It was. I think Tessa's awesome.
I wonder why WWE is not biting on signing Chelsea. I know she was at the Performance Center, but they didn't follow through with her.
I don't know a lot of the decisions they make. You know, like they didn't sign Tessa. That
that was odd too.
Tessa's the odd one because you think with her pedigree, with her skill level, and the fact that they've been so aggressive.
Yeah.
And she was in the Mae Young Classic last year too.
But here's why a lot of people WWE doesn't sign people. Sometimes people just don't want to commit full time to WWE at that certain point. We've definitely seen that in the past. But also, you don't know what came up with the X-rays. They do all sorts of physicals that they've said no to people before because of that. And for all we know, she might have had some weird thing on social media that we don't know about, or something in her personal life, similar to why they weren't signing Matt Riddle until recently. I don't know that. I don't want to make it seem like I'm suggesting anything, but it could be anything really. Why?
I don't think it was. I mean, I have an interview with Tessa from like a month ago that's up on the site, and she said she's been in contact with them. They didn't sign anyone from last year's Mae Young Classic, really, right?
Well, I know they wanted to. I believe they wanted to
sign Jazzy Gabber.
Yeah, but she failed the physical.
Right, but it came out. Yeah, she had the. What was the issue? I'm forgetting right now. But
I'm pretty confident Tessa Blanchard will be signed soon.
Well, now she signed to Impact.
She's with Impact now.
Yeah, she signed with them.
Yeah, but for how long?
They said long term. I think it's 2 years.
I mean,
yeah, her and Swan recently signed multi-year contracts.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say, Jesse. Who knows if they'll be in here in 2 years?
Well, no, it's just like, what is an Impact contract, but whatever.
It's,
as far as I know, as far as the people I know who work at Impact and know about Impact, they kind of do the kind of lower end people. They just kind of give them, per appearance. That's the reason why they can do indies now. But the people who sign bigger contracts, they kind of throw it, give them a little bit more money that they can make a sizable living. So
yeah, but they got a precedent now, right? Like they said that they'll release anyone that wants to be released. You know, and with the Hardy stuff, with the Broken stuff, they just turned all that over. So who knows? Yeah. I mean, you might be right, Jesse. That maybe it won't be 2 years, but she's a superstar.
I mean, even if it's in 2 years, she's pretty young, isn't she?
24 or 5, something like that.
I thought
she's young.
Yeah, I think what I wrote down was that, with the exception of Rey Mysterio, I think she's the most likely person to see in WWE on this show.
Yeah. What we had next? So we had the NWA World Championship match next, and this match was great.
Great.
Yeah, as far as just the emotion that came with it, just because I don't really look at matches for like the catch can and how many flips they did. I think of the passion and the backstory and everything, the culmination and all that. I mean, the whole thing. This was the most built match of the whole program. And so that's the reason why I felt like it should have been the main event, because I think that it would have made sense to culminate and coronate Cody. He's the first ever father-son duo to ever win the NWA World Championship. He was 1/3 of the mastermind behind it, and the crowd was, the crowd was. It seemed like they were higher than any other spot. I mean, they were higher with different spots of the match, but the match as a whole, it seemed like the crowd was more into this match than any other ones. But I mean, that's my personal opinion. I'd imagine you would differ, Raj.
No, so I actually like the match because I like the old school stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because every New Japan ROH match, you see the pattern. Like it's, as people are going to hate that, are going to rip me on Twitter for saying this, but all the good matches are kind of the same. It's going to go at least a half an hour.
About 5 false finishes.
Yeah, the first false finish, that's when you start getting the "this is awesome" chants.
Right.
And then you just you do a few more false finishes, and then you go to the end. And then kick out, shock, disbelief. They're kicking out of everything you shouldn't be kicking out of.
Are we talking about New Japan or WWE right now?
Both.
The awesome matches, that the matches that get high ratings right now all kind of go like that, right?
Yeah. Whereas
I see, that's why I really love Brock Lesnar matches, because there's so much unpredictability. You don't know, except for recently. Before like this year, you didn't really know how it was going to go. There was that wild factor before, and these other matches you kind of know what they are. And anyway. So that's why I like this match. It's kind of like what I grew up on, just kind of old school. I think that, I don't know if it was by design, because Nick Aldis is also not a flips jumping around doing just, splits and cartwheels kind of guy. Yeah. So I thought it was, I liked it. But for this crowd, they like that stuff. They like the false finishes and kicking out of huge moves right away. And so because of that, I think the way they did it with what that is, I think this was like fifth as far as in-ring work goes. I thought the Hangman Page match was more athletic than this. So I thought for this crowd, it was the right place. Almost any other time, I would say I agree with you that the title match should go on last, the most built match should go on last, and the big title win should be the main event. But this is a crowd that's more focused on match quality as it is. So
Tessa Blanchard's 23, by the way.
There we go.
So, Jesse, what are your thoughts on this match?
I agree with what Raj said. I thought this was very similar to a WWE style match, particularly with the spot where Magnus hit the big elbow on top of Brandy. That was kind of the gimmick thing you would see in WWE. And I think that's a good thing because you want different types of matches on the show. Mm-hmm. Not every match on the show was going to be like that. You had a match like the main event, which was going to be the Lucha Libre, just a bunch of spots matches. And you want to have this match, which had, like you said, Chris, the most storytelling going into it. I thought they did a great job with the video package beforehand, hyping it up with the music. And, it's I'm a sucker for when you're showing Harley Race with the title and Dusty with the title. It made it seem like it was such a big deal. I loved the entrances. I like when the guys come out with a team of people like you see in UFC and you see in boxing. It makes the guys look like complete superstars. When Cody came through the curtain, my first thought was that Cody left WWE because he saw himself as a major superstar, and WWE didn't see him at that level, and he was frustrated, so he left because he believed he could be that way. And watching him enter the arena tonight, with the big entrance for the NWA title with 10,000 fans, I think it's kind of clear that he is that level of a superstar, and he's done it without the aid of WWE's promotional vehicle behind him. I thought this match was a huge coup for the NWA and Billy Corgan. I think this is the first time many people in forever have cared about an NWA World Heavyweight Championship match. It was a title that was almost worthless, being wrestled on small indie shows not that long ago. So it was a big deal to get it on the show. I like Nick Aldis. Cody's a bigger star than him right now. It's better for the title to be on him. It's a better story. And I thought the match was really good. The only thing I didn't really care for was the spot where Earl Hebner threw up the X sign and they were acting like Cody couldn't continue, because I think fans have seen that so many times that nobody believes it. And it's more just like, all right, they're going to stall for 30 seconds before Cody comes back out. Did give us a chance to see DDP though. So that's good.
It gave the DDP spot and gave Cody a chance to blade. Outside the ring. You know what? I'm torn on that with Cody as far as how he'll do in WWE now. Because yes, he is way more of a star now, but it's also a different world, as we see when we see Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, what happens when they go to a WWE. You see AJ Styles. AJ Styles is doing great, right? But he's not the guy. He's WWE champion, the B-show champion, never headlines a pay-per-view. Yeah. But the guy that they're putting the promotional money and everything into is, Reigns and Strowman and, those guys. So I don't know if Cody will get to that level. I honestly don't see it.
So I don't see it.
I don't think
I see him being a big star in NXT. I see him possibly winning the NXT title if they had him go that route before going back to the main roster. But on the main roster, I see him in that a higher mid-card spot. Definitely he'll be better than he was before, but not.
I 100% agree with you, Raj. I'm with you. I see Cody being an NXT champion if he comes back. I don't honestly. I just don't see him being the main eventer if he came back to the WWE. I think this is a really good move that he isn't with the WWE and that he's earning his, that he's growing his stock, because I think right now being the NWA champion, NWA is growing its prestige in the past year. With Tim Storm and Nick Aldis, winning the championship, and I think NWA as a whole is really growing with Corgan and Dave Lagana. I think Cody is a good face for NWA. I think Nick Aldis was actually. I think he did a fantastic job, but I think that's that. I think that's his ceiling when it comes to the popularity. I just don't see him being a star in the WWE. So it's probably best for him to not be signed, from WWE.
You know what I think? To your point, Chris, what I think when I think of Cody and the Young Bucks, I think of Matt Hardy, right?
Yeah.
You think of, he had this super over gimmick. It was the hottest thing. And people are like, oh my gosh, imagine if this was in WWE with that audience. And you see what they do.
I don't see him
real quick, Jesse.
I don't see
Vince
him.
McMahon would say, "You ruined it." Go ahead, Jesse.
I don't see him at the top level in WWE, like the level that Reigns is at, or Strowman, or AJ, just because it's a very limited number of spots.
Yeah,
like there can only be 2 or 3 guys that are pushed that level. So, is Cody deserving of one of those 2 or 3 spots? I don't know. And of course, anyone in WWE that goes there, if they're booked poorly and they're booked to look like losers, then they're not going to achieve that success. So I think he clearly is much happier and outside of WWE, and he's able to fulfill his ambitions. So I know you talked to him recently, Raj. I don't see him going back anytime soon unless there's just a ridiculously big money offer. And maybe there is, because WWE probably wasn't a big fan of this show, and they're certainly not a big fan of the MSG show.
The MSG show, I think they poked a sleeping bear a little bit there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I could see them just throwing the money at him just to get him out of there and then do not much with him.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So it seems as if DDP just was probably talking to Cody or something like that. It's like, hey, bro, let me get this spot in your match, bro. Like,
Cody and so DDP did it. So we Kelsey, who does our weekend podcast on Wrestling Inc. She's at All In and Starcast, and she has an interview with DDP on our YouTube channel, and DDP talks about how far him and Cody go back, and like seeing Cody as a kid, because Cody, DDP and Dusty were so close.
Yeah,
and DDP would call Cody a young buck. Growing up. Yeah. And so it's kind of funny, like kind of ironic now we're here. But I know that was Cody's thing, was to have DDP.
I was thinking about what a great career.
What was the correlation for Glacier?
For Glacier?
Yeah, why Glacier?
I'm not sure, but I mean, obviously he must be close with them, but I'm not sure exactly what it was. And the other, so Brandy Rhodes' dad was there too, right? That was her dad?
Yep.
It was Glacier, it was DDP, it was Tommy Dreamer, and then it was Brandy Rhodes' dad, and then Brandy Rhodes' brother.
Okay.
And his dog, Pharaoh.
Yeah, Pharaoh. Yeah. I'm sorry, so Jesse, what were we going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that I am proud of Sean Davari for making a great career out of just being a minion that takes bumps.
I forgot he was there. One of my favorite guests on our podcast.
He was there just to take that bump, and he did a great job, and he's made a great career out of it. I'm not saying that ironically. I say you do what you can.
Yeah, I'm gonna text him. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna text him and see if we can get him on my show on Tuesday. I don't know why he was there. Like, I don't know what's
for that.
He had someone to take that bump.
No.
I want to say people are wondering why you were there. What's the significance? He usually texts me right back, so we'll find that out. It was good. Let's move on. Adam Page and Joey Janela. we talked about this match a little bit. It's definitely a fan of the Angles match, because if you came in there not knowing anything about this, you would have no clue of what's going on. And then at the end we saw Joey Ryan come in, and so Jesse, give the fans a little synopsis of just a really express version of why this match came about.
Okay, well, it dates back months ago. Basically, it comes down to a storyline where Hangman Page's gimmick in the Bullet Club was that he had a really big dick. And then Joey Ryan, who's, of course, the whole gimmick is based around his dick. And there was kind of this jealousy angle because the rest of the Bullet Club members were fans of Joey Ryan. Eventually, Hangman Page kills Joey Ryan in storyline and being the Elite. And then the last few months, he's been wrecked by guilt because he knows he killed him. And it's been kind of like this Macbeth kind of thing where he can't get rid of his boots because they were covered in Joey Ryan's blood. And so they had this big blow up where he was going to wrestle Joey Janela, and then it turned into the storyline where Hangman Page was going to kill another Joey. And that's kind of how we got to this point where Hangman Page has become completely unhinged and was a complete psychopath in this match. And then, of course, Joey Ryan, who wasn't really dead, came out at the end. So you really have to watch Being the Elite. It sounds completely ridiculous.
Goofy as
Because it is. Because it is. But if you actually watch the show, I was like, you know what? That was actually really good storytelling. When he has the phone and he's climbing up the ladder and he's choking him with it, it's
great storytelling.
It is. It's goofy as hell, but it's well executed. And if you watch the shows, you're like, oh yeah, that's actually makes total sense why he would have that, because that's his murder weapon. You have to. I mean,
yeah, I know. But again,
we're suspending our disbelief for that angle.
Yeah, but it's one thing to suspend it for
angles. It's not for everyone. I will fully admit that it is not for everyone. You can call me a mark for it, whatever.
No. I mean, obviously, everyone in the crowd loved it, right? I mean, they were going crazy for the boots, and I find that stuff goofy as hell. That's not the stuff I like, but clearly this crowd did, so it worked. So I had nothing against it. It's not my style.
Outside of that stuff, the match was crazy. Like this was a scary match to watch. The burning hammer on the ladder, the power bomb off the ramp through the tables, which they kind of missed, and then the final, the air raid crash off the ladder through the table. Like this was really scary, and I knew it was going to be scary because if you've seen Hangman Page and if you've seen Joey Janela's indie matches, that these guys take a lot of risks, and I think Joey Janela was had one of the biggest opportunities tonight, because I don't think even if you watch Being the Elite and you watch Ring of Honor, you wouldn't have seen Joey Janela. A lot of people probably saw him for the first time. I think he's got a lot of charisma. He's got a really good act with his girlfriend, and he did a really good job tonight, but he's killing himself, and you wonder how he's going to be able to wrestle into his 30s.
He's trying to become Mick Foley should not be the guy you try to emulate if you want to have a good life, Right. So here's my thing is I really was liking this match. Like I thought there was a lot of crazy stuff, like you said, Jesse, but I thought it was well worked. I thought Penelope Ford looked like a superstar in the making as well. Mm-hmm. I thought I think Hangman Page is a superstar. He's got the look, the talent.
His stock has gone so far up since the start of this year, as far as just guys who have looked so much more legitimate.
It's funny, like how much just changing up your look a little bit too. Like he grew his hair out, from back in the day, and obviously worked on his physique and everything. He looks like a much bigger star than back in the day. He looked like nobody. Or you look at Kenny Omega when he was at FCW. I could see why WWE would cut him with how he looked back then. But he looks like a gigantic star. So I was really into this match. And then as soon as the boots came, I was like, oh God, this is stupid. And, I know the being the elite crowd and everything loved it. But that's when all of a sudden it just is like, oh, this is all fake. And we're just having fun.
Well, that's
as opposed to like, we care about who wins and loses.
Well, that's what we get back to. Was this show for the people who watch Being the Elite and the Big All-Ins, or was it for the casual fans? Because if the casual fans saw that, they'd be like, this is stupid.
Yeah. And I find my preferences becoming more and more casual as I'm getting older. But
certainly. Yeah.
But yeah. But that's why I said like it worked for this crowd. So if it worked for who they were going for, obviously it was the right move. So yeah. It just took me out of it.
Yeah, I like Adam Page too. I think him joining the Bullet Club was good because he was with the Decade. That's what in ROH he was with the Decade. He was kind of like their water boy for a while, and then he broke away from them, and then he kind of had a face run for like a hiccup, and then he joined the Bullet Club. So I think when he joined the Bullet Club really helped him, but I think, it's funny because I think the 6-man is the only title he's had. And he hasn't had any singles championships. And I think it was really odd because he almost won the TV title, but I think he should have had a singles championship in ROH. And I think he's underutilized. And I think he's a star in the making, but I mean, I think the ROH is holding him back a bit. I think the Bullet Club affiliation is good, but I don't know. I think they're holding him back. Jesse, what are your thoughts on that?
Once he got the Hangman gimmick, that was a game changer for him because he really was. I remember when he first popped up in ROH, he was part of the Top Prospect tournament several years ago, and he was kind of like this good-looking young guy, kind of looked like he was still maybe in high school, just like really young, clean-shaven babyface. And once he got the Hangman gimmick, and I think the Hangman gimmick, even though it's not really much of a gimmick, it's not like he's hanging people really anymore, but just it allows him to have cool merchandise, and it helps sell it. He's been one of the best risers in both Bullet Club. And as goofy as the Being the Elite storyline is, it's helped his career. He's way more over because of it.
So apparently, so Cody said, all their contracts are going to be up by the time the Madison Square Garden show comes up. Young Bucks are up this year. Kenny Omega's is February. And he's saying that they're all going to go together. And so that's Hangman Page, the Young Bucks, Cody, and Kenny Omega. So we'll see if they stick with it. But that would be quite the coup if, WWE signed them all together.
Another version of the Radicals.
Well, remember someone got left out of the Radicals. Shane Douglas was supposed to be in that group, and they left him high and dry.
Well,
yeah.
In that same interview, because it was, I forget if that was either an interview with Dave Meltzer or an interview on Chris Jericho's podcast where he said that. But he also said, Cody said at the time, he said, I really can't handle any direction, and I can't be given any direction by, management or telling him what he's like, tell me the finish and tell me the time I need to go. But other than that, don't tell me what to do in my match and all that stuff like that. And he seemed like by indicating that he really wasn't interested in going back to WWE for that reasons, because of just how much freedom he's explored. And then he said they've all made a pact together that they're all going to, they're all going to stay together. So that makes me think that they're planning on not signing with WWE, just purely based off that speculation, because he made it seem like he really wasn't interested in going back. And he says, oh yeah, we're all sticking together. So
well,
that's
you don't
$1 million
want to
question. The question over all of this, whole show, everything is where are those guys going when their contracts expire?
The last thing they want to say is we really want to go to WWE, though.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to tip your hat too much, even if he signed a deal tomorrow. He'll probably say the same thing for the next few months until
even more. If you're signed, you're not supposed to say you're signed, right? Like Matt Riddle couldn't say that he was signed for, once it became clear that he was signed.
I met Matt Riddle in a parking lot at Evolve, literally just me and him, and I was like, "Hey, are you signed?" He's like, I don't know." So,
yep. I had someone who just debuted in NXT. His last name rhymes with C. I had him on my show, and I still keep in contact with him. And I asked him, and he was like, he didn't tip it off too much. So
it must suck for those guys, because everyone must ask them all the time.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to one of my favorite matches, just because of the character, enhancement on it. Jay Lethal and Flip Gordon. Flip Gordon won the Over the Budget Battle Royal, landed this spot here to go for the ROH World Championship. I think it was pretty evident that he wasn't going to win the title, but it was great. I like this new thing with the Jay Lethal. And it's funny because a lot of people, they have to watch a video to kind of get it too. It was a video shortly after he won the ROH Championship, where if someone pats him in the back, it gets like this Macho Man Randy Savage trance and his Black Machismo gimmick back in ROH and back in TNA. And so Pafo, now they have this hashtag Brothers from Another Mother type thing. And so it was him and Gordon, and he ended up winning. The fans were into the Macho Man trance, and it was successful for the fans' stake. What do you think, Raj?
I like the match. I think Jay Lethal is awesome. I think Flip Gordon's has a ton of potential. He's another guy I can see being a superstar. I don't think he's there yet. I don't like the Macho Man stuff. Macho Man's my favorite wrestler of all time, but to me, if a world champion should not be doing comedy like that, like it's like if Roman Reigns starts acting like Kamala, and starts like patting his belly and doing this goofy stuff. It's like there's this place for that on these shows, but the world champion, if that's your top guy, that should not be it. And so I don't like Jay Lethal. I think that's mid card stuff, and he's a main eventer. So I don't like that. Yeah, I mean, and he does a crazy Macho Man impersonation. He does it great, but I just don't like that in that spot. But that being said,
like how he does it,
he does it perfect. I mean, he does the arm stretched, and I dig it. I love hearing Macho Man's music. It like every time I hear it, when I'm at graduations and they play that song, I'm like,
circumstance, yeah. Yeah.
But I just don't like that gimmick for this. But I thought the match was really good, and I'm a big fan of Jay Lethal and Flip Gordon. I think the sky's the limit for Flip, and Jay too. I just don't think he should be using that gimmick.
How about you, Jesse? What do you think? Yeah.
Oh, you, Jesse.
Jay Lethal to me is a really good talent, but he's best used when he's in a storyline and he can cut promos, because I think he's a really good promo cutter. So it's hard for him to kind of get thrown into a match like this where he basically didn't know his opponent beforehand, and it's just kind of a regular match, because he's really not the flashiest wrestler. I know that's ridiculous saying he just came out as Black Machismo, but I think he just it's harder for him to just have a great match without any storyline whatsoever than it is for maybe some of the other guys that were on this show. I thought, I'm kind of with you, Raj. I think that he's way better as a talent away from the Black Machismo gimmick, and that was kind of something he did just in TNA when he really had nothing else to do. I will say that I really liked seeing Lanny Poffo out there. I think that helped legitimize it a lot more, because if Lanny's not out there, it's just this guy, this indie guy, doing an impersonation of a beloved wrestler, and it comes across as a lot cheaper than if Lanny's out there and it's like, oh yeah, this is actually like a really heartfelt tribute, which is what it really is. And I thought the match was fine. I think it was a little difficult coming after the street fight with the crazy bumps that those guys took, so it was a little harder for that. But overall, the match was fine. Flip is definitely really talented. I think he's at the point of his career where he can take losses like this and it actually helps him, as opposed to maybe someone else, if they took this loss, would be like, oh, they really shouldn't have done the job there. But he's a guy just looking legitimate in the ring with a guy like Jay Lethal or someone like Cody or anything like that is a benefit to his career.
And to your point, with Flip, this whole angle of not booking him all in has just raised his stock so much. He just became a much bigger star over this whole storyline. So it was brilliantly done. Just the savage stuff just took some of the seriousness out of it. But
Flip's only been wrestling a few years. I saw him probably because he broke in the Boston area, and I saw him probably a few months into his career, and that was only a few years ago. And now it's like crazy to see just how much his stock has risen, just basically by being the Elite. If he's not on that show, he's not working probably New Japan Best Super Juniors. He's probably not working for the Crash in Mexico. He's probably not doing, he's probably not on All In. It's just, it really worked out for him.
Yeah.
Did we mention Brandy Rhodes, by the way?
Profit was interesting.
She looked just insanely amazing tonight. I just got to say that. I'm going to throw that in there. And she again,
well,
she was out with Flip.
My wife watches my podcast, so,
Yeah, well, good thing mine doesn't.
Jesse, you single?
Yes.
Okay, you can comment on Brandy. So.
Brandy's really hot. I was actually thinking this between Brandy and Penelope Ford, Joey Janela's girlfriend. I was thinking that like there are people out there who really have a lot of nostalgia for like the early 2000s, late 90s era of WWE women's wrestling, where it was a lot more exploitive. And I was thinking that people who hadn't watched wrestling in a while watched All In, that might be the impression that they're getting, is like, oh wow, these girls are really hot and they're dressed really sexy, which isn't necessarily. I'm not going to say anything more.
All over again.
Yeah,
it's so weird. Like I feel like you can't say anything anymore, even though they're dressed.
Well, I learned from Big Dave. I learned from Big
Right.
Dave. I'm not saying anything.
What's that?
I learned from Dave Meltzer. I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, no comments on the females. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, for Jay Lethal, I guess real quick, I guess I stand alone. I think it was, I love his Macho Man impersonations. I think it's great, and Jay Lethal's been my favorite wrestler for the past few years now. So I guess anything is exempt for him. I guess so. Kenny Omega and Pentagon Jr. This is probably bell to bell the best match of the night. It was fantastic. Raj, what are your thoughts on this match? As far as, of course, Omega went over. I think that was pretty obvious. But Pentagon, he stuck with them, and Pentagon's really growing his stock, man. Winning the Impact Championship for a little bit, and really thriving in Lucha. His angle with Vampiro, they really put him on the map as far as America's concerned. So I think Pentagon's really rising in stock fairly well. What do you think, Raj?
I think Pentagon's awesome. Kenny Omega, it's almost like he sets the expectations so high that if it's not like super amazing, you're disappointed sometimes. Yeah. I thought this match was really good. It wasn't one of his best matches of the year, but I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. I think some people were disappointed. Again, I think it's just the high expectations that people have with Omega, but I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And then, you know, the ending when they turn the lights out to get Chris Jericho out there dressed as Pentagon. I love that. And Jericho was able to get a little plug for his cruise. So I thought this whole thing was great. It was probably my favorite thing on the show, actually. As far as just a match went, this was my favorite for sure.
Yep. Jesse?
I really like Pentagon. I think he has just so much charisma. And I think that, you know, any company that's looking for a really great Latino babyface, he's someone that you would look at. I think he's a good wrestler. He can really work too, which you might lose with the whole Zero Miedo thing. But I think he did. I know that's so fun to do. He's so I thought he was actually the real star. Kenny, I know Kenny's great. I know he was going to put in a big effort. Raj said it wasn't one of his best matches of the year. Well, he's had some of the best matches anyone's ever seen this year, so I think that's an unrealistic standard to have. But I thought it was a really good match. I think you could argue it was the best match on the show. I'm not sure if it was better than the Okada Skrull match, but it's right there. And it was just, I think if fans were buying their tickets or tuning in saying like, okay, this is Kenny Omega, I want to see a really great match, I find it hard to believe that you could be disappointed by what you saw tonight. And I thought Pentagon was the real star of the show. Like you said, Chris, it was really, everyone knew Kenny was going to win this match, but there was that spot with the arm breaker and then the package pile driver where the crowd really bought the near fall. And that's a big deal because, you know, most people watching were like, oh, there's no way Kenny's going to lose or do a clean job to Pentagon, who doesn't even work for New Japan. But they were able to get there, and that's a testament to how hard these guys worked and the way they told the story in the ring.
Can I gotta say something real quick about that?
You killed that package pile driver. They didn't kill that thing, man. Yeah, you were about to say something about that, Raj?
Yes, I think that's so stupid to do that on the apron. I think you're risking just permanent neck injuries. The stuff now that they're doing on the apron, they're basically telling fans like stuff in the ring doesn't hurt as bad, but when we go on the apron, that's where it hurts. And it's just and it really does. So you're just telling fans that that's where it's really hurt. So you're like pushing yourselves to have to do moves on the apron, and it's freaking killing people. You know, like Jeff Hardy doing the swanton.
To me, the package pile driver it looks bad, but I actually think it's one of the safe, like as far as pile driver variants, I think it's actually more dangerous to do a standard pile driver on the apron. The Jeff Hardy bump was really bad because there's literally no way he could take that, which didn't revolve.
Right. There was no give. It was he just took it.
Completely. I agree. The last year, when I watch wrestling, I'm much more afraid of what guys are doing than before. And maybe that's just me maturing as a fan, that I actually am more concerned with these guys' safety. But it just seems like there are a lot more stuff being done all the time that I'm just like, that was really unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. It's unnecessary. When he did it on the apron, I looked at it and there was no give. Like his head hit the apron. And
you're saying it's safe, but his head hit first.
Yes.
You know, when he landed.
No, I agree. The Hardy bump bothered me the most because every move is dangerous if it's botched, right? But when done correctly, it's not that dangerous. But
you're doing it on the apron, so if you botch it a little, that's a deal.
I know the risk is more, but with something like the Hardy bump, and I don't really want to compare them. I'm just saying something like the Hardy bump. There was the design of that bump was for him to take this huge horrible bump. It wasn't like a botch or a screw up. I felt the same way about the Katsuyori Shibata headbutts. That was so stupid because there was no way he could do that in a safe way. The design was for him to headbutt him as hard as he can, and that's what he did. And unfortunately had terrible effects.
Yeah, it's just stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I hate, again, it's like now it's like someone's gonna take a real knife in the ring and stab them, so they're still going to kick out at 2 to get the this is awesome chance. You gotta stop somewhere.
This is turning into a tangent, but the thing that bothers me the most is that if you're going to do a crazy big bump, make it really mean something. Like Mick Foley flying off the cell, right? We're going to see that. We've seen that for the last 20 years. He had a whole touring group all about how he took that bump and how crazy it was, and it was this huge thing. And now guys take these big bumps, and it's like the 5th most important thing that happened in a match.
Yeah, and you forget it 2 weeks later, a week later.
Yep.
Yes.
So what it reminds me of? It's like comedians that have to cuss a lot to be funny, and it's like when you have to do crazy bumps to be over, as opposed to a Rock hey, I know people don't want to hear anything good about Roman Reigns on the internet, but he does not do stupid stuff. He's going to have a long career with the way that it works, and he has good matches. Whereas Jeff Hardy, you see how he moves now, from and he's only 41.
He's still doing it.
Yes. And that's all he does now. Like his matches are no longer good.
Yeah.
Like you see him, he moves kind of like an old man in the ring, and he tries to do those big spots here and there, and he doesn't look good anymore. And it's because of those years and years of not stupid, but the high risk stuff catches up.
Yeah.
And doing less of it, cutting back on it. Jericho said it best, man. People give him crap, but when he said, great matches don't matter. It's storylines and personality. And when you can combine all three, when you can have a great match without doing stupid stuff, and that's at TakeOver, that's one of the things I really liked about Velveteen Dream and EC3. A lot of people, that was their least favorite match on the show. But I like that they didn't do any crazy stuff, that it was a basic match. It's not all these near falls. I challenge wrestlers nowadays to do a great match that will get over with fans, so that you don't have a ton of kickouts of each other's finishers and near falls. And if you can still get the crowd into it, because if you can, then you're a good storyteller.
I go back to since WrestleMania 18 is the theme of the show, I go back to Rock Hogan.
Yeah.
And it's like the biggest pop of WrestleMania 18 was Rock and Hogan standing face to face and them looking both at the crowd.
Yeah.
That was the biggest pop of the night. Had nothing to do with V-triggers, had nothing to do with One Wing Angels, which Jericho said he'll never take another one because it was terrible on his neck. And like, yes, this wrestling, this show is historical. It was great to watch, but I think that the bar is starting to get so high and start to get higher and higher and higher as far as the standard of a quote unquote good match, that people at this point is going to have to almost kill themselves for people to say that was good, a good match. It wasn't great, but it was good. I mean, someone almost broke their neck. Look at the junior champion against Dragon Lee.
Takahashi.
Right, Takahashi.
Broke his neck. Yeah, Takahashi broke his neck. You know what I mean? It's like, man, you that shouldn't be the standard of a good match nowadays.
Because where it's going to go next. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
I want to reel it back a little bit, because it's not fair to compare guys like The Rock and Hogan, who are icons, and The Rock, not everyone is going to have the charisma of The Rock. As a matter of fact, nobody is. He's The Rock. That's why who he is. I think it's a little unfair to be
that's why I said Velveteen Dream and EC3.
Yeah, that's fine. But Velveteen Dream's taken a lot of risks too.
Who?
He did wrestle he wrestled a safer match at TakeOver, but he's taken some bumps. Everyone has to take big bumps from time to time. But I do think
I'm not against big bumps. I'm just when you're doing like 6 V triggers in a match.
Yeah,
it makes so when you do 6 V triggers in a match, that means that move doesn't hurt that much. If you have to do that many, and the guy is still not out, right?
It's kind of like the Superman punch.
Yeah, but the Superman punch, the V trigger looks dangerous. Like it looks like it would knock you out, right? So when the Superman punch doesn't. But
they both generate a reaction. Like,
but I think you should protect something like the V trigger, which is more athletic and more high impact.
Well,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Nobody protects his moves more than Kenny, because no one's kicked out of the One Wing Angel.
Yes,
no one ever.
And
that's a huge part of everything. And maybe we're getting off topic, but real quick, probably my favorite Kenny Omega Okada match was the first one they had at the Tokyo Dome. And the reason was that because they only hit 2 finishers. Okada hit 1 Rainmaker that Omega kicked out of, and then he hit a second Rainmaker that Omega didn't kick out of, and that was it. And that was 50 minutes.
So they protect their finishers, but they do these moves that look like they could kill you.
Kenny does a lot of
jumping tombstones,
driver, and all that stuff.
Yeah, jumping tombstone.
I agree.
That looks so devastating, and then when you just kick out right away, it's like, okay, then it wasn't really that devastating.
I agree, but that's how wrestling works. Is that over time, stuff that used to be huge moves becomes routine. Everyone does a super kick now, right?
Yeah, but you can take it back too. Like you, so yeah, super kicks, DDTs have been,
same thing.
Yeah.
Power bombs.
yeah, what used to be a finisher no longer is, but now you can take an armbar and that's a finisher now, right? So it's just reprogramming the audio, because an armbar doesn't look all that crazy or like a crazy finisher, but you do it right.
If you train the audience, they will. Marty Scurll got the crossface chicken wing over as a finisher.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And like with Pentagon, real quick, like one thing I didn't like, and both of y'all are making some really good points. One thing that I didn't like is the fact that he did his arm breaking deal, and Omega within like 30 seconds brushed it off. You know what I mean? Like, usually, like in Lucha, like when he would do that in Lucha, like they would sell the mess out of it. Like he's quote unquote breaking their arm. And Omega got right back up, did a couple more V triggers and one wing angel, and I'm like, okay, so he just killed his
he was selling it at the end. He was selling it
barely, but when he did the V triggers and the one wing angel, he barely sold it, and it's like, I thought your arm was supposed to be broke.
Yeah,
so
that's wrestling again. Though that's wrestling. That's Seth Rollins, whose knee is screwed up, and then he's doing 5 suicide dives in a row, and. Kurt Angle is breaking guys' ankles, and those guys are still wrestling matches. It's just that's wrestling. I mean, I agree though. It is kind of annoying.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Okada and Scurll, just real quick thoughts to Jesse on how you thought about that. We kind of merged both of those matches together as far as two of the best.
Let's talk about Jericho.
Okay, yeah. So lights went out, and it's funny how Ian Riccaboni and Don Callis played on. They probably didn't pay their light bill. It's the first All In.
Oh, that was so annoying.
Well.
I thought it was so annoying.
I thought it was stupid, because I'm like, okay, so that's not real. You wouldn't say that even if that was true, you know what I mean? But
who's the third guy on commentary?
Excalibur.
Excalibur.
Yeah,
he does.
Excalibur. Yeah.
PW Pro Wrestling Gorilla play-by-play guy.
Yep.
There were times I can tell him and Ian Riccaboni apart, and one of them was just irritating the frick out of me this whole show. And anyway, and during this, like, the lights went, wrestling fans know. Just shut up when the lights go out. We know it's not, right as the finish comes and the light goes out. We know it's not a technical difficulty. Just keep quiet. Let the anticipation build. Instead, you're making it sound like you're being a smartass, not like you legitimately think the lights went out, right?
Oh, they didn't pay their light bill.
Right. It's like, yeah. You really think, maybe they didn't pay their light bill. Just shut up.
There's like an inspector right outside the door, like, okay, cut it off now. Let's just ruin the whole show.
Yeah, just be like, hey, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, what's this?
Right.
That's better.
And that's why Don Callis.
Hey, this is the first time we're doing this. Lights might go out.
That's why Don Callis. That's why I like Don Callis so much, because he was talking about this on his podcast. Like, he was upset that I forgot who was it that was commentating with him. He said that you should look at the monitor as if you know nothing of what's going on. You know what I mean, in the ring. And that's how you sell it better, as far as they were talking about the first time Jericho came to Japan and attacked Omega. And he was like, and I could tell that he was doing that here too, but Riccaboni and Excalibur was like, yeah, I'm sure Callis was pretty upset about those things. Yeah. Like, why would you throw that line in there? That was stupid. So,
but here's the big thing. That was Jericho's first appearance for a wrestling promotion in the United States since he left WCW in, was it 99?
July 99.
Yeah, 99.
Yep.
So Jericho, he previously said he'd never worked for a company in the US without, that wasn't WWE. Now he's going back on it. And tonight he made an appearance. And I think, Impact, their ratings have just been dying. And I think they're gonna get worse starting next week once NFL the regular season starts. They need a real star, and by real star, I don't mean Aries or someone that's wrestled on the WWE pre-show, or they need a Randy Orton. They need a guy that's headlined. One guy, not a bunch of guys where that's all you got on top, but one guy to bring some audience in, and you build new stars around it, because you're getting all these new guys in that no one knows, and it's just not working.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. All right, so
Yeah,
and
someone pointing out All In isn't a company. That is true, but he said he
It's
wouldn't do it
non-WWE.
for a
Still
wrestling.
non-WWE.
He wouldn't be in a wrestling show in the
Yeah.
U.S. Yeah.
Well, I think in hindsight, he clearly said that as a way to make fans think that he wasn't going to be at All In.
Oh no,
Yeah, but
he'd
he's
been saying
that
it
for
way before that.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's been saying that for years. Yeah. I figured that it was to promote the Jericho cruise. I was like, I'm waiting for the Jericho cruise plug, and he did it at the end. So I said, okay, so this all makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, he still made the appearance. It was still shocking, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okada and Skrull, just quick thoughts. Jesse, what do you think about this match? We all kind of shared about what we thought. You have any additional thoughts on this match?
I liked it. I think the whole point of what the Young Bucks and Cody talked about of All In was putting on matches that you wouldn't see anywhere else, which is this match, because New Japan doesn't book heavyweights versus junior heavyweights in singles matches.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they had a really good match. I thought they told a nice story with Marty trying to prove himself against the measuring stick in New Japan as far as the heavyweight division is concerned in Okada. Both guys were over, and I thought fans might be disappointed. I heard fans being disappointed in the card being announced that they weren't getting like an IWGP Heavyweight Championship defense, and they weren't getting Okada versus Omega 5 or anything like that. But in some ways, they got a match that was more unique than any of that, and that's a match like Okada and Skrull, and they did a great job. And I think Skrull would make a great heavyweight, but I knew that beforehand. I love, last note, I love Marty's entrance. I think he looks like a total superstar when he comes out, when the fans are cheering for him, and he has the costume and the dark lights and all that thing like that. I think it's probably my favorite entrance, like on the independents right now, or alternative wrestling.
Marty, I like this match a lot. I thought it was great. I look at Marty Skrull and I see a guy who could be a superstar in WWE if he was like a foot taller. And that's the problem. He carries himself like a superstar. He talks, he's got the poise, he's got everything. But we know how WWE is. And he would be, he's the same size as a lot of guys on 205 Live. Yeah. And I think he'd just be so limited there. I think he's so good here. I loved him in this match. I love what he's doing in New Japan and ROH. He's one guy I don't want to see go to WWE because I think they'd misuse him, because I think he's got a ton of charisma, and he's great. And Okada is a great wrestler, obviously. That's the most understated thing to say, but I felt Skrull felt more like a star in this match in the ring. He just felt like he had more charisma. I'm a big fan.
This is the testament to how good Okada is. Everyone has their best match when they're working with him. Everyone looks better when they're working with him. And you hear that when he was working with Omega, when he's working with Naito, when he's working with Tanahashi, when he's working with anyone. And he's a lot like Bret Hart in that regard, that it's funny that everyone seems to have their best match with him, and everyone after their matches, everyone's talking about the other guy.
Yeah, Okada's been my favorite wrestler in Japan for quite some time. I'm a big fan of Okada. I think he's fantastic. So this match didn't prove me wrong for sure. So I thought it was fantastic. So on both ends. All right, so the main event was the Golden Elite versus Mysterio, Bandito, and Phoenix. Phoenix just recently won the Mega Championship over at AAA, so that was the belt that he was carrying. Raj, what are your thoughts on this 6-man?
It felt like he never got a chance to get going. I think they were really hurt for time. I was getting into it, and then it was like, boom, it's over. So you can't go wrong with these guys. I mean, they're ultra talented. The Young Bucks are, they do some amazing stuff. Ray is Ray. When I started Wrestling Inc. in '97, Ray was the reason a couple of my friends got into wrestling, because they loved the stuff he was doing, how innovative it was, and stuff they had never seen before. They were into that way more than the NWO and all that other stuff. So they'd watch the cruiserweight stuff and then kind of, leave or tune out. And it's funny seeing that back then, and we'd have these Raw Nitro parties, and they would come over and kind of leave after the cruiserweights were on. And here we are 21 years later, and he's in the main event of, the biggest independent show ever. So Ray's a legend. It's a testament to I sometimes feel like he doesn't necessarily always get the respect he deserves online. At least he always gets big pops at the shows and everything. But dude's a legend, and so I liked it. It was just very rushed, and the ending came way too quick. So I think it could have been match of the night if they had more time.
Yep. Jesse?
Yeah, you could actually hear, I think it was 10:53 Eastern time when I heard over the announce, like you could hear over the announcer saying like, we got to go home, and I was like, oh man, they got to rush this. Yeah. Fortunately, the kind of match they're doing was a lucha libre tons of spots match where you could actually rush through it as opposed to like a longer drawn out story. But yeah, the finish, not as much as the finish being rushed, but just like the pin, and then we're off the air, and then Ian Rakabani was still trying to talk while like the logo was playing. Yeah, that's the problem. It was a really good match. Ray is a legend. Ray looked really good, which I'm really impressed by considering how long he's been wrestling, how old he is, how many knee surgeries he's had. He still can move well. He's working with guys who are in the prime of their careers that are unbelievably athletic in the ring, and some of the best high flyers in the world. And he doesn't. It's never like, oh, the old guy's getting in. It's like, oh man, Rey Mysterio can still really go. Mm-hmm. I thought this was a great opportunity for Bandito, who most people probably don't know. And similar to Joey Janela, this was his first real, widely seen match probably in the United States to a degree. He's a really big talent. So I think getting in the main event with all these guys was a big deal for him. And the match was good, but yeah, it was rushed. And that's the irony in this whole thing, was that the Young Bucks and Cody had said previously that they didn't want to book a lot of guys. They wanted to book everyone, they knew, obviously, but they couldn't because they wanted to make sure everyone had enough time to do their match. And everyone else on the show did have enough time to do their match. The unfortunate side was by the time the Young Bucks were on the show, they were running out of time and they didn't have enough time to do their match. Yeah. So that's kind of too bad. But overall, I thought it was a good show. And it wasn't like the main event was disappointing. It was just, it could have been really, really great. And we just got a good match.
One thing we got to talk about, we got to go back and real quick and talk about the penis thing with Joey Ryan. We forgot, we've totally skipped over that. But Chris, what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I thought it was a good match. I still didn't think it was main event. To me, like I said, I'm old school. I want the NWA champion. What this entire event is surrounded around Cody, Nick Aldis. Let it be the end. Let Cody celebrate at the end, and that be the send off. I mean, that would have been my preference. And I think the fact that it was a hard cut after the finish, just I'd rather seen a hard cut with Cody celebrating than this match. So, but the match quality was good. I think it was a really good match. I love seeing Kota Ibushi in the ring. I think he's fantastic. So yeah. So Raj, what are your thoughts on the on the Joey Ryan spots that I so accidentally skipped?
It worked for this audience. I thought it was kind of cute, like doing the little Undertaker spoof, except you had people dressed up like giant penises. So it was amusing. It was kind of funny. We didn't talk about it, right? Or am I forgetting? Did we talk about it?
We didn't. No.
Okay. So I thought it was kind of funny, but it was also, kind of stupid. Like, it was one of those things. I'm glad no friends or wives or kids walked in during that.
Yeah, we did mention that. Yeah.
Jesse? Yeah, it's completely absurd. I thought it was a little much, and I like the angle, so that is what it is. I'm glad no one came in and asked, because there's no way I could oh no, this is fine, and then have to explain the 50-minute long speech about the storyline and how wacky it is. It almost seems like something you'd be like it's almost like an inside joke, the Young Bucks and Cody are probably laughing oh, we got those guys dressed up as penises and we got it on pay-per-view, and it just it was fine. Joey Ryan's return got a big pop. I knew Joey Ryan had to show up on the show at some point, so you might as well do it like that. He's got a lot of charisma. He's got a great gimmick, so you
knew he wasn't dead.
Yeah.
I knew he wasn't dead. There was some dramatic irony in there. The crowd
Joey Ryan never really connected with me, though. Honestly, I just from a personal standpoint, the whole Joey Ryan gimmick never connected with me. So, and I know other wrestlers that don't. They hate it. Like, I know WWE wrestlers that hate it, and I can see why, because you know, it's a very niche gimmick, and so yeah,
it's like a Attitude Era opening match kind of gimmick. But it's I get a kick out of it. I like Joey Ryan, but it's also nothing you take seriously, and it's not someone I want to see in a main event or I care to see wrestle. But if it's on the show, I don't mind it, right?
I'm not a huge fan of the gimmick. I respect Joey a lot just because, you know, Joey's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have the best physique. He's not, you know, the most athletic guy. You do what you do to make money and make your money in this profession. And if that is finding this gimmick and doing that well, and you can get a solid payday working, you know, in DDT in Japan and working in the U.S. independents, then, you know, credit to him for working hard and getting that over. You know, he's doing the best he can. And, you know, the gimmick's definitely not for everyone, but for people who like it, it's a hit. I mean,
he's definitely turned lemons into lemonade, that's for sure, with this gimmick, and he's making a good living, you know, putting over his genitalia. So not a lot of people can say that. So you know, kudos to him when it comes to that. So, any other quick notes, Raj?
No, I think it's just looking at it as a show, not the best thing in the world, but for what it actually is, a historic event. If you went in not expecting Neville and CM Punk and all that stuff, it was a really fun show that catered to the audience it was for. It was, like I said, like ECW One Night Stand was kind of like a gift to ECW fans. I felt like this was a gift to alternative fans. So I thought it was a big success. I enjoyed it. I would not watch it again, but it was a good show.
Jesse?
I think the big question afterwards is what comes next. Or is there going to be an All-In 2? I think there almost has to be, because anytime anything is successful in wrestling, there is another one. And you could argue that the MSG show is basically All-In 2 because it's drawing from the same fan base. And can they get 10,000 fans again? Can they get, you know, in a different market? Well, you know, this was a huge fly-in show. So are they going to get 10,000 people to fly in to, you know, another show? Or is this kind of like, we had to be here because this was the first one and it's going to be harder to sell the second one and the third one? And, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see what the viewership was on WGN America for the pre-show and see what that was. It'll be interesting to see how many pay-per-view buys they do, because if those do a decent rating, I mean, we're in the era of where you get a ton of money for producing content on television. And if you can deliver a steady audience, you can get a lot of money through a television contract. Obviously, they wouldn't get WWE money or anything like that, but a smaller network that could throw some money around could turn, you know, this could turn into something bigger than just a one night kind of special show.
Well, yeah. And a couple things to that. Again, their contracts are up soon. So obviously, WWE signing Cody and the Young Bucks, really, you know, that would pretty much kill an All-In 2 unless someone else decided to take that up.
And that's the big question, is who they're going to sign. I don't think they're going to sign, but that's just totally my opinion. But, you know, that will be the big thing, is how much did All-In and how much did the MSG sellout make WWE mad? And did it make them mad enough to be like, well, we're just going to buy their stars?
Yeah, because their stars, you take away Cody, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega, and that hurts that ROH MSG show a lot.
That would hurt. Well, the tickets are already sold, so
yeah. I don't mean from a business standpoint. Yes, the tickets are sold out. I mean from a buzz standpoint.
It would really hurt ROH in general in running shows. It would be a killer for them. New Japan, they're always going to be successful domestically, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it would hurt them in their expansion in America too.
Real quick, I think you got to factor in StarCast too, because I think, as far as I remember, Conrad was talking about how he doesn't plan on doing another one because it took too much work. So
we'll see about that.
If he doesn't, though, I think that hurts it a lot, because it's an experience. I think the whole weekend, as opposed to just having a one night show, I think that would hurt a lot too.
I will say that turned into the most impressive thing about this show, more so than just the instant sellout, was how big it seemed to be with the multiple day convention and a lot of mainstream media covering it. You know, Sports Illustrated was covering it, Bleacher Report was covering it, and maybe those companies don't cover something if it's not that big of a deal. So I think that helped legitimize this a lot more than just, you know, a thing for indie fans.
Now, I think we've seen with New Japan when they return to Long Beach, and right now when they're going back again for the show in end of October.
Yeah.
It's not an instant sellout. You know, they're not sold out. whereas the first time they went, they sold out quick.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that first time people want to go, they want to see it.
Yeah.
When you go back a couple times, who knows? Second time, if they do it somewhere else, maybe it'll still be very successful. But there is that thing with being the first time. It feels special, and people want to just be a part of it, even though they didn't know a single match when they were buying those tickets, right?
And it talks about, it's talking about the difference between having 10,000 fans in America that are willing to fly in for one show and being able to do 10,000 fans locally, which is what WWE does for their big shows.
Yeah. It's, WWE can't be like, oh, we got 80,000 people for WrestleMania, so we should just do this every week.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah.
What grade would you give it, Raj?
Oh man, it depends. For what it was, for the fan base it was serving, I'd give it an A. For myself personally, I'd give it a B-. It was a fun show, but it wasn't anything great. I thought until the last hour and 15 minutes was pretty skippable. So yeah, but I thought the last, especially the Omega match, and I really like the Okada Scroll match too.
Jesse?
I give it an A-. I think overall it's one of the better wrestling shows I've seen this year. I think it was a big success as far as satisfying the hardcore fans who watched the program. If you were a casual fan, you might have you weren't familiar with all of the storylines going into it, and you didn't know a lot of the wrestlers. It probably wouldn't have rated that highly. But I think overall, there's no way to look at this other than that it was a really big success for the people involved. So it's hard for me to really give it anything less than an A.
Yeah, I would give it an A for the fan standpoint as well. For me, I would say a B-, probably because it was better than my expectations. I didn't expect very high for this, honestly. I knew there was going to be a good show. I knew it was going to be a success. But I personally didn't have a huge expectation. So it exceeded my expectations. So I got to give them kudos for that. So absolutely. All right. So real quick, before we go, plug your column, Jesse, and we'll ride on in the sunset.
Yep, I got Views from the Turnbuckle. It comes out pretty much every Friday on Wrestling Inc., Friday mornings. And I do reviews for the pay-per-views that come out as soon as the pay-per-view ends. I actually have one for All In that's going to be up online 15 minutes from now. So you can check that out over at WrestlingInc.com. You follow me on Twitter at Jesse Collings, JESSE COLLINGS.
And we got the big man Raj interviewing Ric Flair.
Woo!
And gotta let the listeners know all your you had a couple big ones recently, didn't you?
Yeah, so the Flair interview is all up. That was 40 minutes. It was on the 1-year anniversary of his health scare, so that was kind of a big deal. Someone I grew up idolizing, and to be able to talk to him on, interview him on that day, especially because I've spoken with him in the past, but for that it was just kind of special to do it that day. So that was really cool. And then Cody, and we got tons of other interviews and stuff coming up. So keep peeled onto this website.
And of course, Pancakes and Power Slams every Tuesday night. I'm actually when you go to the description, is actually time stamped. So all of the times of everything we talk about is time stamped in the description. So if you're on a computer, just click on the time. If whatever subject you want to know about specifically, just go there and it'll pop up. So another fun feature right here, the Wrestling and YouTube page. So interviewed Colonel Robert Parker this week. Last week interviewed Jeff Jarrett. So interviews every week, and we have a lot of fun on the show. And I'm sure a lot of people in the chat are either saying hashtag Ask Chris or giving P&P some love. So appreciate everybody for all you wonderful fans. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the post All In podcast for Wrestling Inc. I am Chris Featherstone on behalf of Raj Giri and Jesse Collings. It's been fun, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you soon. So long.